expert, China ignores Russia in its economic rivalry with the West. Second-day drills, China carries out simulated joint precision strikes on Taiwan targets. France's Macron, Europe shouldn't join U.S. China conflict over Taiwan. Chinese real estate companies lose over $40 billion. Bad debts of 6 state-owned banks escalated.
In her April 7 op-ed, Diane Francis, editor of Canada's National Post and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, argued that while Russia is discrediting itself as a superpower, China focuses on beneficial new relations in the Middle East and Central Asia. China is evolving into one of the two global power centers, vying with a solid Western bloc. She stated that Chinese President Xi Jinping had invited the leaders of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan to discuss investments and the extension of pipeline, rail, and road projects bypassing Russia. The summit, known as C+C5, will occur in May. According to Francis, Russia has held vassal status over these 5 nations in Central Asia for many years. She wrote, "The reorientation of China's foreign policy is transformative. It further distances Beijing from Putin's borderless partnership and significantly expands the range of soft power." She added, "The goal is to secure trade and explore resource opportunities in Central Asia and the Middle East. By pursuing such a policy, China is increasing its influence and elevating its status as the world's second-largest economic power." The New World Order is now the G2, or the hegemony of the West against the hegemony of China. Because of Russia's disgraceful involvement in the conflict in Ukraine, trade routes from China to Europe will now only pass through Central Asia and the Middle East. Consequently, Putin's war has cut Russia off from the global economy. According to Francis, the G7 has practically followed Xi Jinping's policy, announcing its version of China's One Belt, One Road initiative, the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. Over 5 years, the West plans to raise $600 million for projects in developing countries. Francis said, "I hope that the deployment of a new diplomatic duality will be about trade and prosperity, not imperialism, and I hope that Russia's fangs will be pulled out forever."
As the military exercises started in reaction to the island president's meeting with the U.S. House Speaker entered a second day, China claimed on April 9th that it was practicing precision strikes on important targets in Taiwan. CNN reported that the Chinese Navy featured tactical maneuvers in the mock drills. Multiple services had simulated joint precision strikes on key targets on Taiwan Island and in the nearby waters. The Eastern Theater Command of the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, was in charge of the drills, known as Union Sharp Sword. According to Taiwan's defense ministry, 58 PLA warplanes were spotted over the Taiwan Strait as of noon local time on April 9th, 31 of which crossed the median line and entered Taiwan's ADIZ, or Air Defense Identification Zone. Also, it claimed to have found 9 PLA Navy vessels. After Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen returned from a 10-day trip to Central America and the U.S., during which she met the U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. China began the exercises on April 8th. China describes these exercises as a serious warning against the Taiwan separatist forces' collusion with external forces, and a necessary move to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Chinese regime had earlier threatened to take strong and resolute measures if Tsai's meeting with McCarthy went forward. When Nancy Pelosi, then the Speaker of the U.S. House, visited Taiwan in August last year, China responded similarly by conducting a series of military exercises that encircled the island and fired missiles over it. Many observers viewed those maneuvers, which marked the first time Beijing had fired missiles over the island, as a significant uptick in China's military intimidation of Taiwan. According to China, military exercises for United Sharp Sword will last through Monday, April 10th. French President Emmanuel Macron said in an interview on April 9th that it is not in the European Union's interest for there to be any acceleration of disputes around Taiwan, and the bloc should maintain an independent foreign policy towards the US and China. According to Reuters, Macron made his comments to both French media outlet Les Echos and Politico during his most recent 3-day state visit to China. Macron said that the EU doesn't want to get into a bloc versus bloc logic and should not be caught up in a disordering of the world and crises that they have nothing to do with. AFP noted that Macron has long wanted to turn Europe, led by France, into an independent geostrategic player between the Cold War blocs. The French head of state thinks that Europe should avoid building up more tensions, but instead take this opportunity to establish its role as a third pole in geopolitics, alongside Washington and Beijing. He added, "The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic, and adapt to the American rhythm or a Chinese overreaction." In addition, Macron also stressed that the EU should increase spending on military, develop nuclear and renewable energy, and reduce reliance on the US. An advisor to Macron told Reuters that both Macron and his counterpart Xi Jinping had a dense and frank talk about Taiwan's matters. Macron had high expectations to use his first official visit to China in 4 years on April 5th to persuade Xi to help settle the Ukraine war and bring Russia to its senses, but was unsuccessful, as Xi gave no indication he was willing to do so. However, Macron's visit, together with a delegation of 50 business leaders, such as Airbus and nuclear energy producer EDF, still signed new contracts with China. As reported by CNN, the Chinese Communist Party has recently started 3 days of military drills, including simulated attacks on Taiwan. The move came just a day after the self-ruled island's president Tsai Ing-wen returned from a 10-day trip to meet House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The CCP views Taiwan as part of its territory and has threatened to use force one day to bring the island under its control. Taiwan's defense ministry announced on April 8th that Beijing sent up to 71 military planes. Among them, 45 penetrated Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Moreover, 9 vessels of the People's Liberation Army Navy were also spotted. Taiwan's ministry said, "The People's Liberation Army is deliberately creating tensions on the Taiwan Strait. Besides damaging peace and stability, it also creates a negative impact on regional safety and development." This is the second time the CCP held military exercises around Taiwan since House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit last August.
According to Chinese media on April 4th, China's real estate situation is very bleak. The profits of state-owned real estate companies have plummeted. As of March 30th, out of 144 real estate companies that have released financial statements, 105 companies saw a decrease in net profit, 76 companies suffered a loss, and about 13 companies lost over 10 billion yuan, or over $1.45 billion. It is estimated that the overall loss of 144 Chinese real estate companies is at least 283.9 billion yuan, or over $41.3 billion. The increase in real estate risk has led to a high level of bad debt in China's banking industry, and the bad debt ratio for real estate loans of 6 large state-owned banks has increased. It can be seen that the number of wealthy Chinese investors looking to overseas real estate markets is increasing. 13 real estate companies lost over 10 billion yuan. As Tencent News reported on April 3rd, Hao Hengle, chairman of Medea Real Estate, said the entire real estate industry situation in 2022 can be said to be extremely severe. There are 2 major phenomena. One is a large number of unpaid debt remains, and the other is that there are many businesses that suffered losses. The 2022 financial statements show that the net profit of state-owned enterprises such as China Merchants Bank, Poly Real Estate, China Resources, and China Jinmao has plummeted. 2 state-owned enterprises, Sino Ocean and OCT, lost over 10 billion yuan, or over $1.45 billion. The private business's situation is even more difficult. Country Garden Group has suffered its first loss in 16 years since listing. Sunac, Longguang, Rongsheng, RNF, Agile Property, Genro, and other private real estate companies all lost over 10 billion yuan. Vanke Group wrote in an annual report to shareholders that in 2022, the sector's dire situation far exceeded expectations at the start of the year. Sales of the top 100 Chinese real estate companies fell 42% year-on-year. The industry's financial capacity has shrunk sharply, and the external debt market has lost its function. According to China National Radio, the revenue decline of state-owned enterprises is generally about 20%. Private enterprises operate stably by about 30%, and companies that cannot pay their debts are over 70%. Sluggish sales, reduced sales due to lower prices, low gross profit, plus significant loss of assets are the core reasons for the decline in Chinese real estate companies' net profit. According to incomplete statistics of the Economic Observation Network, as of March 30th, out of 144 real estate companies that have released financial statements, 105 companies saw a decrease in net profit, 76 companies suffered a loss, and about 13 companies lost over 10 billion yuan. It is estimated that the overall loss of 144 Chinese real estate companies is at least 283.9 billion yuan, or over $41.3 billion. If adding over 100 real estate companies that have yet to announce their financial statements, the industry's scale of losses will be even greater. This is also the most serious profit decline year in the past 10 years of the real estate industry. The bad debt ratio of the 6 largest Chinese state-owned banks increased sharply. Risks in the real estate sector have increased the banking industry's bad debt ratio. As Yikai reported, compared to the real estate bad debt ratio last year with the 2021 figures, the Bank of China's bad debt ratio was 7.23%, an increase of 2.18 percentage points compared to 2021. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China's one was 6.14%, up 1.35 percentage points. The Agricultural Bank of China's one was 5.48%, up 2.09 percentage points. In addition, the real estate bad debt ratio of 3 other state-owned banks also increased compared to 2021. Zhu Jiangtao, Vice President and Chief Risk Officer of China Merchants Bank, said on March 27 that the real estate bad debt ratio is expected to increase this year. However, the generation of new bad debt loans is expected to decline.